Good evening, Mr. Bond fans, and welcome once again to, we're going to maybe call this one a discussion rather than a debate. We'll see how far we go before that maybe becomes the case. I have a feeling that we're going to be having a bit of a love-in on this one, but there might be some things that we disagree on. We'll see as we get into it. We're talking about Tomorrow Never Dies, of course, and I am obviously joined by Mr. David Zaritsky of the Bond Experience. How are you, David?
I'm doing great. I'm particularly excited for this one. As you could tell, I'm sitting in the environment of probably a movie that is in my top 5. So I'm not going to be dinging a lot of it. We may have a discussion around what we love and what we love slightly less. But yeah, this has so much emotional connection for me. It was one of my, it was a movie that sort of got me back into Bond. It wasn't my first Bond movie, but it had waned over time. And 1997, sitting in the movie theater, Titanic's out that year. I go to see the new Bond film. GoldenEye was great for me, but it wasn't the one that catapulted me back into Bond. This was the one where Pierce Brosnan, and I'm sure we'll get into it, is just, he was everything that I wanted to be in a man. I mean, I hate to put it like this, and, motivated me to get his watch, for example. This was my first kind of luxury watch. And
Beautiful.
yeah, so this is going to be an interesting emotional ride.
Oh, nice. Well, I've been really looking forward to talking about this one because you have mentioned in the past in debates that we've had and in other videos about how this was the film that kind of sparked you like to take your fandom to the next level kind of thing. So I'm really interested to go through it like sort of scene by scene, chunk by chunk, and find out, yeah, what did it for you then and now?
And let me know if this is like too creepy. I can remove his head.
I want to hear that story. I don't know if it'll come up at a point in the film or what, but I want to know how you acquired that because it's quite something. I love it.
It'll come up, no doubt.
Well, I think what you just said is really a good jumping off point for this discussion, because I like to kind of start these out by talking a bit about the context in which we first saw the film, the environment that it came out in, what your memories are of it coming out. You said that it kind of resonated with you a lot more than GoldenEye did a couple of years previously. Were you really hyped up for it in the build up to its release, or was it only like seeing it for the first time in cinema that it kind of really hit you like, oh yeah, I really want to get back into this?
It was the poster. I mean, I can actually connect it back to the poster, which is, part of it's behind me right now. I remember GoldenEye was a slow burn, which is like, oh, Bond is back and it's a new Bond. And I remember merchandising, and I was kind of this ancillary Bond fan at the time when GoldenEye came out in 1995. But I just was into like a lot of other things, superhero and Star Wars and things like that. But I remember seeing this poster and the close-up of Brosnan's face, and he had some stubble and he looked, slightly older and more experienced. And I'm like, me too. Like, even though I was a whopping, I think 32 at the time, or 34 years old, I was, a young David. I just remember walking through different places and seeing this poster and getting super hyped up. And it just looks so steely and modern. And then seeing the commercials, the commercials were just, and I've seen you do some of the trailers and commercial ratings and things. The ones around Tomorrow Never Dies was so exciting. It was like a mini Bond movie. And so I was just perfectly hyped up from the time that I went there. And I remember it was a big event to go to the theater. And I think I definitely went with Danielle, but I think I also went alone a couple times. To me, it was the perfect escapism. Like the first time in my life I could sit in a theater and escape and nothing was happening outside of it. So this to me was the most, it was emotionally draining. It was an emotional high. It was everything. And also, as we're going to get into, it's just bombastic fun. Like this whole movie from beginning to end is a nonstop joyride.
That's fantastic to hear, particularly that you were in your like early 30s when you first saw it, because I think so often in Bond, so many of us, and we both do as well, you have a strong resonance with ones that you see in your childhood during your formative years, and sort of when you're like 10 years old and really getting into it and all that kind of stuff. So it's fascinating to know that it was like in your early 30s seeing this one that really kind of rejuvenated your fandom, I guess.
Yeah, it's the best way for me to say it is I went from the sideline spectator of enjoying James Bond to jumping in to the incredible toilet bowl that we now call fandom, where I started to, dress and research and look at these things and really study this film and all it brought to bear.
Amazing. Well, my experience with it is slightly different because this was already released by the time this was just on the cusp of me becoming a Bond fan in sort of the mid to late 90s. And this one I remember a bit of buzz around the world is not enough being out, and certainly Die Another Day, I was a full Bond fan by the time Die Another Day was being built up to. This was one that always kind of it's always just felt like a part of the canon for me. It never really had that new shine on it, but it was an absolute favorite of me and my friends growing up. And if we did have little mini debates between us on the playground at school, it would be about like, which is the best Brosnan? Is it GoldenEye? Is it Tomorrow Never Dies? Is it World Is Not Enough? And a fair few, people really vocally liked this one the best. And I wonder if a big part of that is because this is like a non-stop ride. This like moves at such a great pace. There's so much action in it throughout. Yeah. And I think there are some good emotional moments. I think there are good character moments. And I'm really curious to dig into how you perceive some of the Bond lifestyle stuff in this, because I think that there are scenes in this that where Brosnan is at his like peak Fleming Bond, that is. So yeah, we'll get into it. But I think first of all, we should start by talking about the pre-title sequence. And yes. I want to go a bit existential with this, because this is a huge action sequence, Bond with machine gun explosions, he's infiltrating a terrorist arms bazaar and all of that. And some people don't much care for that. Like, they don't like to see Bond going around with an AK-47, like mowing people down. To some fans I know, that isn't a very Bondian sight. They like it when it's more stealthy with the PPK. How do you feel about that? I guess it's a broader question about action in Bond, really.
To me, it's scales and it's a balance. So if it's an entire film filled with him, blowing things up and machine gunning people down, no, I don't like it. However, if you really take a look at this film, and I'll take the pre-title sequence as a great example, you've got it bookended where there's machine gun fights. You definitely have this thing where he's a freaking jet, doing missiles and blowing up trucks and excitement like that. And yes, he's got the machine gun. But in the middle of the film, the cream filling, you have him sneaking around the newspaper factory. You've got him sneaking around here. You've got him doing, intrigue and espionage and running into these different characters. So the pre-title sequence for me, if it just sat on its own and that was the whole Bond film, I'd say, yeah, you're right. It's a freaking video game. But to me, this sets up the cool and panache that Brosnan brings to this movie, even more than GoldenEye. So you've got him, you've got the swagger of David Arnold's music, wah, 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 and he comes up and he has the lighter and he lights it, and the guy looks up, and then that's when you see Brosnan, filthy habit, and you're like, this guy is cool as shit. And it affected me so much, this pre-title sequence. The very first outfit I put together in this whole sartorial journey I've been on with Bond was that outfit. I had a company called Wested, who made all the Indiana Jones jackets, make me a replica of the jacket. Amazing. I got the turtleneck, the top, I got the green pants, I had everything. And then eventually I got the watch. So for me, the pre-title sequence was just this introduction of, not only is he cool, have panache, the one-liners that we love Brosnan, it has the most amazing heart-throbbing action as well. I loved it all.
Oh, 100%. Okay, we're on the same page then, because I adore this. And I very much agree. Like, it's a great reintroduction to him as Bond. And I think as much as I adore GoldenEye, his performance is so much more confident here right off the bat. In that opening sequence, he has swagger. He looks amazing, like blending obviously with stunt people here and there. But he's phenomenal in this. I was curious actually about the smoking thing, because from a Bond lifestyle perspective, like obviously it's a huge part of some of the earlier films, and the Fleming books, obviously he smokes an awful lot of cigarettes. Do you have an opinion on whether or not Bond should smoke in the films or not? Smoke cigarettes, that is, because in this one they make a very clear point of him punching the smoker, saying filthy habit, and maybe a sign of the times, but it's if you're used to the Ian Fleming James Bond, that might come as quite jarring.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that showing Bond smoke just to say, look, it's a Fleming moment, I think is terrible. Just to say, and by the way, that goes for any Fleming moment that is shoehorned into the film. If he's smoking because he's this swarmy, playboy that has this, interesting thing, or if he's this, young buck who's vaping, fine, bring it on. But if they're just doing that to be like, look, isn't he Tim Dalton cool? Like, no, don't have him smoke.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's cool. Because I know Brosnan will smoke cigars in Die Another Day, won't he? I can't remember if he does before that.
That serves the purpose of the story. He's with a cigar maker talking about the delicados and how, harsh they are. And he's in Cuba. He should be smoking. But just to sit there and take out a cigarette and go, Marble Lights, the only smoke for Bond. No.
Yeah. That's very true. And you touched on David Arnold's score there in your summation. And I think we're going to be on the same page through much of this. Just masterful, beautiful, like one of the best Bond scores there is, I think, just in terms of... And
you had dinner with him.
Yeah, well, you did as well. You've had more than dinner with him.
We had dinner with him.
Yeah, and just in terms of taking on the John Barry tradition, like there are certain motifs in this, and I think I notice different things every time I come back to the film, where there are just certain cues here and there where you can just really hear the John Barry in it, but it's modernized and it's its own thing. It's not pastiche, it's not doing the same old themes, it's rejuvenating them, making them feel energized and new and fresh, which is, and I think in this White Knight sequence, just the way he just expertly hits all of the action beats when he needs to. It's just it takes you on a ride with the visuals. It's wonderful.
We have to pause here and just chat for a moment more, because otherwise we will talk about David Arnold for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
I will say the thing that David Arnold does in this film, and he even says, publicly, that he threw everything, all his Bond ideas, into one film because he only thought he might get one film. He didn't know he'd be this reoccurring character. But speaking of characters, his music in this film is like a co-star. I really feel like in that opening, pre-title sequence, for example, when he's like shooting up all the trucks and the trucks are flowing over and you hear the Tomorrow Never Dies theme, that's what John Barry did so well. He wove action and the theme, the main title theme, seamlessly. So it didn't seem like all of a sudden you hear like, no time to die. And you're like, where did that come from? No time to die. And you're like, damn it. No, you just, all of a sudden you're ebbing and flowing. You hear this wonderful Tomorrow Never Dies theme coming in here amidst all the action. It's seamless. It really is seamless.
Well, this is probably a good segue into talking about the title song then. Obviously, we've got Tomorrow Never Dies by Sheryl Crow, but then there's Surrender by K.D. Lang, which is the end title track that I think most Bond fans have a bit of preference for, and you can certainly hear the bits of that through the score throughout the film. Do you have a huge preference for either? I'm a fan of both. I like both of these songs, and I think it's just like a brilliant 2-for-1 offer as far as I'm concerned.
So I think I may be unique in the Bond community because I actually like the title theme better than Surrender.
Wow.
I do. And they're both great, but this is a nostalgic moment. So again, 1997, I'm hearing the Tomorrow Never Dies theme everywhere. Grocery shopping, on the radio, listening to it over and over again. It was my workout music, believe it or not. So to me, it's just a part of my fiber of loving the film, that, and again, the theme weaving throughout and just loving those moments. It's almost like if Casino Royale had the Vesper theme as the opening, title song, in some way, I would just be like, this is it. This is like everything that I've ever wanted. So it ranks pretty high, and yes, above Surrender for me.
That is amazing. I feel
you
like
have it the other way around, right?
Totally, yeah. I feel like we need to put you in a lab and study you or something.
Cut me open. Just
no, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the main title track too. But Surrender, it just has all of that bombacity to it that I think. I actually like how the title sequence plays out with the Sheryl Crow song, and I think it is a bit more romantic, and it feels more in tune with what they're going to do with Bond and Paris Carver later on in the film. It does feel like it kind of is a song to match that relationship, whereas Surrender is a nice big bombastic action kind of song, I think. But I love both of them. I think we're very lucky that we have two wonderful songs in this film, which is great.
Well, is everybody feeling the love fest? This is like, can you feel the love tonight?
I
It's
know.
just gonna be love.
Yeah, we're going to see if we're going to have anything that we disagree on, really.
Well, so far we do. We have the songs. I mean, here we are.
True. Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about first act, the setup, the sinking of the ship, the whole GPS encoder plot.
GPS tracking system. Yeah.
It's like flashbacks to For Your Eyes Only, to The Spy Who Loved Me. We have a sequence where there's no Bond, but we're seeing stuff going down on a ship. How do you, in broader terms, actually, as far as plot goes, all of this stuff with the GPS encoder, how does that work for you? Do you like this sequence on the boat? It's interesting you mentioned that this film, I think it did release on the same day in some places as Titanic. And it's like when you went to the cinema that weekend, I guess you had a choice of two options. Which ship do you want to see?
Well, Titanic was the one that was popular to go to. Like everybody went to Titanic. And then I remember for some people that did see Tomorrow Never Dies, a lot of people, me, it was this wonderful surprise. And then you would talk about Tomorrow Never Dies and try to get the Titanic people to go see Tomorrow Never Dies the next weekend or something. It's like, if you see only one movie, all right, see Titanic. But if you see two, that would have been a great marketing. This is why they don't hire me at Eon. But I will tell you this, the first act for me, I'm of two minds. If you take a look at No Time to Die, the one thing I felt was missing, amongst other things, but one thing is this wonderful way that Bond movies focus on these ancillary characters that you just never see again, like seamen. Sorry, you know what I mean? The crew.
Keep it
clean,
an
amazing Bond title. Seaman never returns as you get older. But really, just these little moments with the crew and things like that, and obviously these huge moments where you have this batshit crazy thing that can go up in a submarine and across, and it's not in water anymore, and that's impossible. And we're science fact, we're not science fiction.
Yes.
Echoes in my mind, but I look back on it very fondly. At the time, though, as I was loving this movie, this would be the part that I would fast forward. Because the GPS thing is almost like, yeah. Get him on a motorcycle. Yeah. Get him driving a BMW with a phone. Yeah. Just to me, it was almost like light adhesive to keep things moving along. But to me, it wasn't the center plot. The center plot was this megalomaniac guy, this Rupert Murdoch type guy that needed to be destroyed at any cost. And he had this wonderful foil named James Bond, who was a thorn in his side that needed to be taken care of, that to me is the most Fleming thing. I mean, that to me is the best part of the Fleming books, is the thorn in the side Bond and how he just makes absolute trouble for the bad guys. To me, that's the plot, not let's find a GPS encoder.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And the GPS encoder is just the MacGuffin, I guess, for like the earlier parts of the film to get Bond involved in the plot and all that. I quite like it though. It definitely has an air of, I guess maybe it was new technology in the 90s. I don't know. Like now, obviously we have, things in our pockets that can track our location anywhere. But I also really like the whole sinking of the ship in terms of these kinds of scenes where we don't have Bond and we're with a bunch of characters who we may or may not even see for the rest of the film. I'm thinking like Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, For Your Eyes Only, No Time to Die, all of these scenes that we have to kind of set up plot. I think that this is one of the strongest ones. And again, I have to credit David Arnold's fantastic score through this. There is a shot that always I don't know if I well up with tears, but there is something about it that really gets me. There's this beautiful sort of choir music that comes in just as the captain of the sinking ship is abandoned ship, and you see them in slow motion getting up and running away, and the shot kind of lingers on this one woman getting up, and then this choir sound comes in, and I'm like, oh my god, this is getting me. And then when Stamper comes out with his machine gun to kill the survivors, it's brutal. I think it's a really cold opening sequence. It's really quite strong.
there is, it's so funny you say this too, because I think this is one of Brosnan's best films where it's showing his swarminess, his pithiness,
Mm,
his swagger, like you say, but then you have these really dark, brutal moments. I mean,
mm.
there's killings in here that are point blank, which we'll get to, but Stamper, like, killing everybody and even determining how many should be dead and how many should be surviving. I mean, some dark stuff.
Yeah. Is this film rated PG-13 in America? Do you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's one of the few Bonds that's rated 15 here. Most of the newer ones are like a 12 rating. This one's 15 specifically because of some moments of violence and like Wai Lin using the throwing stars.
How do UK cinemas determine, like, if you're 14 or 15? It's like, no, 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 you're not getting in. Like, because here in the States, PG-13 is a joke. Like, if you're 6 years old with a stick of bubble gum, you could get into any film.
Oh yeah, when I was younger, they would ask you what year were you born, and so long as you memorized what they wanted to hear beforehand,
Yeah.
they would let you in. I remember the first film that I actually was asked to show ID for was Sweeney Todd, of all things, the Tim Burton one,
Oh my
where they
gosh,
were
that's
like, no, you
a
need
good
to
one
show
to
ID.
show.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. So sticking with the opening, because you mentioned about Brosnan there and some of his swagger, some of his smarminess. I think we get a lot of that here, where he's asked to, he's called away from brushing up on a little Danish, which is always really nice. And then we have a really nice classic MI6 briefing scene, I think, where we have like a Minister of Defense. We have Admiral Roebuck, of course, Jeffrey Palmer, Judi Dench co-starred with in the sitcom here. I really like coming back to this and seeing those kinds of scenes because they're so few and far between post GoldenEye, I would say, or post License to Kill, I guess. These kinds of very classic briefing scenes, and I really like that we have it here.
Yeah, I agree. 20 minutes into this discussion, people should go back, especially after seeing No Time to Die, and watch this film, especially if it doesn't rank very high for you, and see if it's actually gotten better, because it does bring back some of these wonderful tropes, like you're talking about the war room. These great war room gravitas moments where they're biting at each other's heels, going back and forth. And Judi Dench here, I mean, I think this is one of her best portrayals, because she's not that she overacts ever, but she has this economy of movement. Watch her in these scenes. She hardly turns her face or head or her chin. She just sits there, looks, and throws a line, and then looks up at the person that she just threw the dart at to see if it landed. Watch her in this. She is a fascinating study, but I love all the tit for tat, and then Bond showing up, and suddenly you've got this room that is just heavy with, now we've started to film.
No, I completely agree. I think with Judi Dench as well, the character feels a little different to GoldenEye. She feels like she's thawed a little bit, maybe. Like, it's interesting that she is saying to Bond, right, we're investigating this media baron, and you used to have a relationship with his wife, so go and shag her to get the information. Like, in almost as many words, she's saying that. And you can't really imagine the M of GoldenEye doing that. But I prefer her here, definitely. And she has more of a role throughout the film. In GoldenEye, she really is only in 2 scenes. Here, she pops up here and there throughout the thing. And I do love this war room that they're tracking Bond on and everything. It's got a good scale to it. Again, just comparing it to something like No Time to Die, where all of those scenes feel very small. It's like M, Moneypenny, and Tanner in his office watching on a screen, whereas here there's a whole room of people and rushing around
everywhere.
It feels like a global issue, and that really helps sell the stakes of the film, I think.
I have a question for you, and maybe people can comment this in your comment section. There are many people I've spoken to, even like Joe Darlington, who absolutely despise the briefing that he has in the car with M and Moneypenny, where the motorcycles are kind of going back and forth and they're drinking in the car and things like that, because it's just, they say it's so outlandish. I think I know where you stand with this, but that is one of my favorite Bond briefing scenes. And it's not just the Moneypenny moments, it's the fact that they are drinking in the car on the way to, wherever. I absolutely love these moments. And even Brosnan's, again, economy of movements of kind of looking over his shoulder and these great close-ups they have of the characters. I think it's absolute perfection. But why do you think there's so much despising of that scene by so many people.
I do wonder if it's there's a certain franticness to it that I think those briefing scenes don't have, and it's one of the reasons why I like it, actually, because it is in the car and everything's moving and you're seeing the police on the outside and all that. It's bumpy, and maybe we're all just a bit too used to it being a more somber, settled kind of scene in M's office. I really don't know. I think that some people, though, do rub up against what I kind of mentioned about M's character being a bit different and how she's, you know, go pumper for information, stuff like that. It does feel a bit perhaps out of character with the other films that she's in around this time. I like it a lot. Have you seen the deleted scenes on the disc for that scene? Because there's a lot more of the there's a lot more of the whole Bond's can't keep his drink under control and all that kind of stuff. It's good. But no, I like it. I like the reveal, like when the thing comes down and you see Moneypenny's in the front seat and she's passing over papers and stuff, making, and
he gives almost like a pigeon double take. He's like, where'd she come from? Did you not see her get in the car when you got in the car?
But no, I think it takes what can be a bit of a stuffy scene and it gives it some energy, and I think that energy really, I think the director does a fantastic job, and maybe we'll talk about this a bit more later on about how this was a very rushed production and quite troubled in some regards. And I think the fact that the director came out with a film that is as exciting as it is, I think is a real testament to his work, Roger Spottiswoode. Okay, well, that's kind of first act setup stuff. And the next big chunk of the film takes place in Hamburg. And we really get to meet the main villain of this, Elliot Carver, played by Sir Jonathan Pryce. Now, actually, he got knighted.
I saw that.
Yeah, a few days ago. Yeah, an actor who I love. Seen him in many a thing. Brazil, the Terry Gilliam film. He's fantastic. Game of Thrones, he's in. He's
Popes.
Two popes. He's going to be Prince Philip in the next seasons of The Crown. Like I think he's had a really good career, and he's sort of going from strength to strength. Not one of the favored Bond villains, and I'm interested to know how he ranks for you.
This is the weakest part of the film for me.
Oh, interesting.
Is him, and I'll tell you what it is. It's almost like a Christoph Waltz type situation where I really liked Christoph Waltz in Glorious Bastards and things like that, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, he's Blofeld, and then you get this disappointing portrayal. It's the same for him. I know he's a great actor. I've seen him in so many things. He can act out anybody, but he brings this campiness, and I don't know if it was the direction of the director or him just sitting there as a method actor saying, well, I'm going to kind of slum it and play a bad guy, and this is how the bad guys all act, larger than life and bigger than big. But just some of the parts are cringeworthy. When he's like banging on the thing, and he's like, this just in, my golden retrievers, and he's just, I don't know, like he doesn't feel dangerous. He feels a bit wacky, and it doesn't really fit what I think the environment of the film is as well. I don't think he's a worthy bad guy for Bond.
That's so interesting, because so many of the words you use there, I would use as a positive for him. He's
good.
One of my favorites. Like, he's easily in my top 10 Bond villains ever. No, seriously, I love this guy.
What do you love about him?
I love the wackiness. I love the campiness. That scene where he's doing his My Golden Retrievers and this just in, love that scene so much. I think he has so much personality and screen presence, despite like physically he doesn't have any kind of, he's not imposing physically. He doesn't have any kind of makeup or prosthetic effects or whatnot on him. I think he does a really good job at kind of commanding the screen, despite looking like he could be a bank manager or something. There isn't anything terribly standout about the way he looks, but I love the eyebrow raisers. I love the deliciousness in which he delivers some of the lines.
Delicious.
Genuinely love him to bits and love his whole plan. I know that you like
his karate plan. Like
that bit I can't defend. That's one scene. But I know that
Calvin 10, David 1.
But even though you don't necessarily like what he's doing, you do like the concept, right? Of like a media baron villain.
love it. And obviously now it's even more relevant. It was relevant at the time. It's even more relevant now. No, I love the concept. I love the writing. I love the script. You know, it's all there. And here's my other problem too. The more I think about his portrayal, there are moments of genius where, you know, when he finds it, when he's talking to Terry Hatcher, for example, and he gives her this look like of just pure anger, and then he softens, and then he tells the story. Like, that's the Jonathan Pryce I wanted to see show up for every scene, as opposed to the let me take it to like dial number 11, which I think he may have done a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue then to talking about Terry Hatcher, because it's in this Hamburg sequence that we meet her, Paris Carver. Another element of the film that I think is much derided, her casting in this part, in a similar but perhaps not as vitriolic way as people complain about Denise Richards as Christmas Jones. Where do you stand with her?
I actually like her a lot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put her like, you know, oh, here's my top 5 island Bond girls that I want to like swim away with in a boat. But I do like her. I think she's, this is going to come across so bad. She's serviceable. I think that there's moments like when she slaps him and the little, you know, I think a part of it is Brosnan is so strong. He's so strong in these scenes that it almost doesn't matter. And that's the problem I have with her, but it's also why I can forgive her, because no one's going to be bad against Brosnan in those scenes when they're talking about their past. When she walks in and he's sitting in that hotel room drinking vodka with his shirt off and the gun and everything like that, I'm sorry, you're just so taken up into this Bondian moment. He just looks so badass and cool, like a cartoon character come to life, and you just have so much emulation going on of like, I need to be looking like that, I need to be sitting like that and drinking like that, that her walking in, I can't tell you if she's doing a bad acting or not, because he's got so much presence, he blinds everything else. So I'm going to say that she's fine because he's so strong, which is a terrible thing to say about her. I understand, but it's not like Stacey Sutton where I'm like, make the bad man stop, daddy. She's fine.
Oh, no, well, I completely agree. And I'd even go one step beyond that. I think she's good. I actually really like her in this film. And I know that I might be bringing over some goodwill that I have for the actress. I remember watching Lois and Clark, which I think was on TV around this time. And Desperate Housewives, I watched that for its entire run. She was great in that. I've seen her in plenty of stuff. I think she's really good and solid. And I think for what she does here, I think she works really nicely. And I knew you were going to love that scene where he's like, everyone loves that scene. It's such a great Fleming Bond moment where he's like waiting there. He's got his vodka. You've got the little shot glasses as well, haven't you? I think I
do. I have the shot glasses, the cufflinks from that shot, the gun. Yeah, I just, do I have that shot? Yeah, here it is.
Amazing.
Come in handy.
Oh, brilliant.
But they've got this like really, really heavy base. I mean, the liquid only goes into this tiny portion right here. So it's about a shot.
Yeah.
But what it does is this glass base keeps it very cold.
Time to start your day. Good morning and happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Alexa. Shut the F up. Alexa, stop.
I need to train mine to do that.
She just wakes up just at these weird times. Please don't edit that out.
Oh no, that's staying in. Oh, that's so cool. And this is kind of like the big emotional center of the film, really, is Brosnan and her. He does a bit investigating in between this, but after he leaves her in that hotel room, when he comes back, she's dead. And we have the scene with Dr. Kaufman, who's another character I'm going to have to probe you about. Oh, I can't tell if you're in love with him or hate him based on that reaction.
I would love a prequel.
Brilliant.
Prequel, the Dr. Kaufman series. He is, first of all, the actor's fantastic, very unique looking actor. He's been in the movie Ghost. I mean, people know him, they see him, they have no idea who his name is, of course. He is amazing. That whole scene. See, but there's an example. This is great. There's an example of a guy who's acting like, you know, up to an 11.
Yeah.
But it works because he's this kind of like unique type of, you know, mustache twirling character that you want Bond to be going on. And again, this is going to be a Brosnan love fest. I'm telling you right now, folks. Brosnan is got such an economy of movements. He's kind of looking back at the bed, looking back at her. looking back at him, but he doesn't make eye contact. He does this little thing with his hand, like, if you shoot me from there, da 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 da. The tete for tete and the connection that these two have, I could have extended that for 20 minutes. I love
easily. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, we're on the same page with this then.
Perfection.
I love. I think it's such a. You need to cast someone really specifically in a role like that as well, because you do have this emotional kind of core of the film coming to a climax here, which is him realizing that this woman is dead, and did he not have stronger feelings for her? Like, that's a real emotional moment, and you've got this villain coming in who kind of needs to keep the energy up. Like, we don't want to spend too long sort of mourning this character because we're going to move on and have the rest of the adventure. He also needs to be like scary, because you need to really fear for Bond in that moment, and I think he really is. He's on that line of like being campy and silly, but also being really creepy and dangerous. And so I really like this actor. I know he's not with us anymore, but every time he pops up in a film, you just know you're in for a treat. It's just one of those really good, solid character actors, and he does brilliant work.
It's a
here.
Great serving up of two very iconic moments, I think, for this film, of why I love it. Number one, the brutality of Brosnan's Bond, where people think it's silly because of Die Another Day, and he shoots him point blank, just a professional doing a job, boink, so am I. And literally my favorite gadget in the entire franchise, better than an Aston Martin, better than a Golden Gun, the Ericsson phone. And this was the scene where you just knew it was a phone. It was introduced by Q beforehand, but now you get to see this thing as much, much more. This is like, it's almost like the Victorinox Swiss Army knife of Bond gadgets, because it can electrocute, you do a fingerprint scanner, it can pick locks, it can drive a car, it can do all these amazing things. And I don't know, this just blew my head away in 1997.
Did you have like a real one of those, like that you could like make calls on and stuff?
Well, amazing. So they didn't make the actual phone as a real phone. This is like when they weren't doing that. This was just a static prop, but I had one of the screen used ones.
Amazing.
This is a bit of a sad story. I'll tell you real quick. So I had a screen used one. It was the very first screen used prop I ever got in my early 30s. I had a little spending money. It was not expensive at the time. And about 2 years after I got it, and I love this piece, it was in a glass case and everything, came with a letter of authenticity from the prop master. Literally 2 years later, we're buying a new house, as young couples do, kids and things like that. It's time, no more renting. It's time to buy a house. And I sold it as for part of a down payment. I sold a Superman cape, and I sold this, and I sold that. And I mean, days after I sold it, I regretted selling it. And to this day, this is a replica that a good friend of mine, Klaus, made for me, because he knows my missing story. But
I so desperately want you to be reunited with it now. I feel like we need like a number to come up on the screen. Like, call this number if you can reunite David with
that would be the most awful GoFundMe story. Please help this guy that's got this huge basement filled with toys to get another toy. Even I won't condone that.
But the sentimental value.
It's all there. I know. Did you like this? Did you like this prop and the whole gadgetry portion of the film?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And how he uses it at multiple points during the film. The car, we're going to have to talk about the car, because I know that the BMWs don't have an awful lot of fondness for them, some people. I always got really excited about the BMW in this film, because it was the kind of car that I could imagine like one of my parents having. Like, it doesn't have, it's not an Aston Martin flashy, it doesn't have a convertible roof or anything like that. It does look a bit dull when compared to some of the other cars in the series. But that kind of works for the role that Bond is taking on here, undercover as a banker. If anything, a spy.
Banker.
Yeah, exactly. If anything, a spy disguised as a banker would have that kind of a car. How do you feel about it?
Oh, absolutely. Even the little moments that they show with the car, talking, thought we'd put a voice that you'd be responsive to. And then, of course, you get this action scene in the car park, which to me is one of the best, most effective and successful gadget, Bond and car stunts out of the entire franchise. I mean, everything works beautifully, from the hood cutting, the wire, to the rockets. Let's see if I can do this without knocking anything over. So you've got the rockets that are in these tubes at the top
Oh, brilliant.
that are firing out against the thing. And I love the fact that you've got this wonderful rocket moment, and then he looks above with his phone, and then it didn't work. It didn't work. Now what? And he's got to drive around to the very ending when it goes into, the Hertz shop. It's again, it's perfection.
Yep, no, we're on the same page here again. Even the David Arnold music, like Backseat Driver with Propeller Heads, isn't it? I think, who collaborated on that particular track. I think.
I didn't know that.
I might be wrong there. Let me know in the comments below if I'm misremembering
they will.
this. It almost plays like a music video. Like the song has such a definitive start and end point. It perfectly matches the on-screen action. And again, to say about how rushed some aspects of this film were, to have music that is so perfectly like screen accurate to moments and hitting these beats here and there, I think it's remarkable that they managed to do it on a relatively tight turnaround time. And
you're shocking me, because I tell you, no, because I thought this scene worked perfectly, and then you've just raised it to another perfect level, because you're right. The music, even the way it starts, that first of all, I defy any Bond fan to drive and not hit the pedal harder when you're listening to that music. But we just talked about using the theme effectively. So even as he's driving that, and you hear na 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 na, and suddenly the soft tune is now an action-oriented tune, but it fits perfectly. Like, I'm sorry, folks, for those of you that are naysaying this film, take that scene, take that like a spearhead to the shin.
It's one of the best. I completely agree with you. One of the best action sequences in the entire series, I think, and it's brilliant to have Bond with this gadget-laden car using another gadget to control it. So he's in the car, but he's not just. I think it would have been quite dull if he'd have just been driving around in it. But the fact that he's in the back seat, it just gives it that extra bit of something. Yeah, I think it's stunning.
And even seeing him like twirling around in the back seat, like this is not a ballet. Like he's rolling around, but when I remember this even as a young man, when he like rolls out of the car and he's sitting behind the column, still driving it, he looks cool as a cucumber. He's got like this one hair coming through, and I'm like, this is Bond. This is badass Bond.
And how the sequence ends when he crashes the car in the Hertz window, and he's got a little smile on his face, and that's what you want. You want Bond to be like, yes, it's a life and death situation, and yes, he's just gone through a big personal loss, but this is a fun adventure film, and he's having fun doing it, and you just want to be him in this film.
Wow, Calvin, that's really important. And again, I'm not flogging No Time to Die, but take the Craig era. There's these funny memes where it shows Craig enjoying a beer and he's sulking, Craig enjoying a woman and he's sulking, Craig has a family and he's sulking. Brosnan here looked like he was having a great time. I mean, people had been killed, and then 5 minutes later he's having a good time. But Bond is an Etch-a-Sketch. It should be wipe and then enjoying life, because it's murder for breakfast. He could be dead.
Completely agree. Like, because I know that I hear that criticism, and I understand it. Like, he's supposed to have lost this mild love of his life kind of character in Paris, and then he's immediately going into this. But as you said, Etch-a-Sketch, like that's a perfect way to describe it, because I don't need 10 minutes of him moping over the loss of Paris. What we get, I think, is just right. He nuzzles her, and during that whole scene with Kaufman, you can tell that he's really upset by it. That's all you need, and now let's go and have fun. So
yeah,
great.
Exactly.
Okay, well, this is about halfway through the film, and things take a bit of a turn here as we kind of head to Saigon for pretty much most of the rest of the running time. As we do this, he pairs up with Wai Lin, Michelle Yeoh as Wai Lin, and I guess this is a good opportunity to talk about her in a bit more detail, and then I think we've covered probably most of the major characters in the film. I love her to bits. I think Michelle Yeoh, her career, like recently, has just been, I see her everywhere now. It feels like she's in so many huge budget films, and it's really nice. I think she's great in comedies, in action films, in romance. Like, see her in a lot of stuff, and she's always really good. This was definitely my introduction to her when I was younger. And the Wai Lin character, one of my favorite Bond girls of them all. I love her. She's obviously one of those action ones, like Anya is in Spy Who Loved Me, Dr. Goodhead, Pam in License to Kill. She's very much in that mold. But I think she's brilliant. I think that the role tailors itself to some of her strengths with the martial arts and whatnot. She really does get involved in the action in a really good way. How do you feel about her?
So I think there is a very specific reason that Bond fans that are women gravitate to Wai Lin, and they find her basically the perfect embodiment of the Bond girl. And I probably feel the same way. And what I mean is she's still visually and physically beautiful, right? She looks amazing in her outfits, that leather, outfit climbing the walls, to when she's dressed up at the newspaper party, even on a motorcycle. She just looks amazing. So, click. Thank you for your man point of view, David. But then they've added this, and every Bond girl says this in every film. It's Bond's equal. It's Bond's equal. No, it's actually not. But she is. Like, she can fight, and she's got gadgets, and she's got her own little, secret, bat cave of devices. And, she takes charge in a lot of different areas. There is a little bit of damsel in distress moments, because it is a Bond film towards the end. But I think throughout, she has a lot of the wise cracks, the quips. I adore her. She is in my top 5 of Bond girls, and it has nothing to do with walking out of the scene in a bikini or even iconic moments. It's the fact that I love when Bond is paired up with anybody that's written well, that's strong and engaging. And you know what? They can still be really flirty. My favorite scene with the two of them is not what you think. It's not an action scene. It's the simplest thing in Saigon when they're showering. And they're having this thing go back and forth, and they're sharing the soap and kind of washing each other's hair. And it's the whole thing of like, it comes from not growing up at all. These little moments, I love that the most between them.
I completely agree. That is a really nice and underrated scene. I think it's one of the, and I also like the scene in her shop, like a little bit after that, where Bond's like looking over all of her gadgets, and he like sets off the flamethrower. He picks up the watch. He's like, oh, familiar. I really like all of that stuff, and it is very much. I think what you said about she does become a bit of a damsel by the end. Like, she does need to be saved, but this is a Bond film, so that's kind of but she never loses her strength or power through that sequence in a way that I feel like Anya in Spy Who Loved Me kind of does. Like, she does just end up kind of tied to a chair at the end, and Bond has to go and save her, and she doesn't really get involved in that much action throughout that film. But Wai Lin is like consistently throughout the film, like getting involved. She's investigating sort of parallel with Bond for her own agency. The whole motorbike scene is just another absolute action highlight. It's phenomenal. Oh, amazing. Yes. Fantastic.
That is so creative. And again, this is like one action scene leading to another. I mean, the fall from the building, all these different things, but they work. I mean, you've got 3 or 4 gadgets coming out of GoldenEye, which had, half of a gadget, watch basically. You've got so much in this film, and yet then they throw the motorcycle. And by the way, Calvin, this is why this film gets dinged by some people. Oh, it's too much. It's like you've got the car thing, then you've got the motorcycle thing, you've got them in an airplane, and it's like, give it. Like, I'm sorry, folks. If you're complaining about Bond moments in a Bond film, I want them all.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, because I hear that sometimes when some people ding on the score a little bit. They say it's like too much Bond theme throughout. I'm like, no, give it me. Like, and particularly when this film was coming out in '97, I can only imagine, like, after GoldenEye, where you didn't really hear it all that much. It wasn't a very John Barry-ish score. Like, all that time since you had a John Barry score, and I can only imagine people must have just felt so, finally hearing it on the big screen again. It's fantastic.
It was great. And by the way, one thing we should make mention, probably at this point, his style in this film just was so elevated. The Brioni suits fit perfectly. All the outfits, even Lindy Hemming, when I interviewed her, was talking about the blue shirt and the black pants. But you know, even that had to be tailored perfectly. It was an off the shelf, cheap. She said $15 shirt.
Oh wow.
And it had to be, you know, sutured and nipped and tucked and everything. So everything looked perfectly. I used to, now here's the story of the head. I used to have, come on, Mr. Brosnan. Good Lord. So
Wow.
yeah, let me bring it back. Everybody's like, that's a gigantic head. I'm going to eat you, David. The reason I had this commission, this was a guy who sculpted this, and he did an amazing Connery one as well. Then I had a friend put the glass eyes in and paint it up. It's got actual like eyelashes on it.
God,
as you
that's
can see.
fantastic.
So this was on a mannequin, if you can imagine, a 6'1" mannequin in a full suit one time. And then another time I had him in the PTS Arms Bazaar outfit with the leather jacket. And this was the star of my whole collection when I only had Brosnan stuff. You know, people would walk in and see this and be like, oh my God, that's so creepy. You've got a full size Brosnan in here. So this has been decommissioned because my, you know, collection has exploded and I don't really have room for a giant 6'1" Brosnan, but at least the head I can put up on a shelf.
That's
So
incredible. Was it based on like any like a mold of his face, like a pre-existing thing, or was it just?
This was a lump of clay.
That's incredible.
And someone sculpted it and then did a whole casting of it and sold, I think, maybe 10 limited edition, and then just got it painted up. But
wow.
I could be the two-headed guy of that creepy film, you know.
Yeah.
Me and my shadow.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I love it. You're gonna have to get all, you'll have like a little Madame Tussauds kind of area in there if you get the other Bonds.
I will say, if you ever get a hot tub with you and your partner, I will send this to you so you can have it as a floaty and recreate the moment you had with Brosnan.
In the Blue Lagoon in Iceland. Yeah, no, I'm already having flashbacks.
Nice to see you again, Calvin.
Oh, fantastic.
I've just made you lose about 1,000 followers. They're just like,
I think
delete.
Gained 1,000 followers, more likely.
Gained. Look at you. You mean gained.
Okay, so on the subject of this being like a non-stop action Bond, and I think we're both on the same page with this in terms of loving it for that. Like for me, this is one of my most put on Bond films. This and Octopussy actually are my go-to if it's a sick day, if I just want pure Bond fun action. It's one of those two that I go for. This does kind of bring us to the finale of the film, which is almost entirely set on this stealth boat, which is Carver's villain's base, I kind of guess. This might seem oddly specific. I've never really gelled with the stealth boat all that much. There is something about it. I know that Peter Lamont who was the production designer on some of the previous Bond films. He was off on Titanic while they were making Tomorrow Never Dies, and he got an Oscar for it. So can't blame the guy for skipping on this one. But it does lack some of the classic Bond villain lair elements for me, and just even in terms of like scale of the model that we're seeing going through the water. There's sometimes I see the set that's supposed to be inside that, and I'm like, I don't see how this fits in there. The geography of it I find a little confusing, because when they're on the sets, it feels like it's this huge labyrinth inside, but from the outside, it looks like it's kind of small. Do you have any strong feelings on this either way?
Yeah, they're pretty strong. I agree with you. I think GoldenEye, I don't want to say suffered from this. It's almost charming in a way, but it has this Thunderbirds moment. You know, like in GoldenEye when the base blows up and it looks like a Thunderbirds base, and you almost expect to see little puppets running. It's the same thing with the stealth boat. Even when it stops and you see the movement of the waves. I mean, our brains are so attuned to high technology now and CGI that you can tell that's a model. You know, the water doesn't look as big. Sort of like what we get in the Atlantis in The Spy Who Loved Me, for example. But the geography didn't bother me when I first watched it. I think hearing people like you talk about that, I've gone back and go, yeah, it's like a Willy Wonka room. Like it just gets huge and big, and just this doesn't make any, like a clown car for henchmen. But I will say, I actually really like what happens in the stealth ship. I like the fact that it's not a layer. It's not a static thing. It's this floating base, if you will. There's lots of movement. I could do without I don't think Michelle Yeoh was served very well here.
Mm.
I think the slow-mo, like, yeah, when she's doing that and it's like slow-mo. I like her throwing star boots. I like those little moments. But this is when I feel like she just becomes literally the woman tied up on the railroad tracks. Almost literally. She's in the rocket with the chains, and it's like, help, Bun, help. So it's got a little of that, but Brosnan is amazing here. I mean, the snarkiness between him and Elliot, like he's still getting under this guy's skin. And then literally he gets under Elliot's skin with the device. I mean,
Oh, that was good.
He's got the one liner, of course, give the audience what they want, just boom. Yeah. So I love what happens on the boat, but you're right. I mean, there's disconnects with the boat itself.
I'm with you though in terms of like I love all of the action that's on the boat. There is that one shot where Brosnan has like a machine gun in one hand and a PPK, or it's the what is it? It's the P99 at this point, isn't it?
P99, yeah.
P99, yeah. And he's like shooting it, and then one of them runs out of ammo, and he has to like throw it to the side. Like I think he's in like full on commando action mode here. The bit just before him and Elliot have their confrontation, where he just walks up to the guys at the controls and he just blasts them. He's just, oh my God, he's so like cool action movie commando. Cool. It's like, I love him during this whole sequence.
But,
even with this,
go
on.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, even when he's got Gupta at gunpoint as well, and he's got the backup plan, like I think he's acting it so well. He's so cool. Yeah, I think he's brilliant.
But that, you've nailed it. I mean, this is why, as a young executive, I started patterning my life after Bond. It was the cool factor that he brought on. It was in the face of danger, he would become not only resourceful Bond, he would be like charming and cool and calm and disciplined. And one of the best parts is when Gupta gets shot and he kind of folds down and he goes, so much for your backup plan, or if I forget what he says, but he's like, yeah, well, I brought one of my own. It's just this little thing he's saying to the audience with the watch exploding in the detonation, but he's so calm about it. It's like that GoldenEye moment when the bullets are flying and he's setting the thing, yeah. And it's like he just kind of does one of these. He's like, yeah, it's just a bullet. He just kind of moves his head just ever so slightly. Brosnan, even maybe, oh boy, am I going to be thrown out of the Bond community, even more than Connery sometimes, just brings this swagger, cool moment that young men like me at the time, not anymore, just want to emulate. And you're like, you know what, if I could just be a little bit more like that in the face of adversity and danger, I think I would be okay with me.
Totally. Yep. No, I completely agree. And I also agree with you about Wai Lin becoming a bit of a, tied to the railroad tracks kind of thing. It's she has just kind of dropped out of the final fight that Bond has with Stamper. We haven't really touched on Stamper so far. I guess he's probably the only he's probably the only other main character that we haven't talked about. I must admit,
Q.
And Q, yeah, of course, actually. We need to talk about Q. But Stamper never moved the dial for me particularly, I must say. I think he works just fine for what he is, a physical kind of villain for Bond to fight at the very end. But that final fight, it's when I feel like it's starting to run out of a little bit of steam, and I'm kind of good for the ending after Carver gets minced up.
Yeah, we don't have to stay on Stamper for too long. You know what he reminds me of? Who was the bad guy in Timothy Dalton's The Living Daylights?
Oh, Necros.
He reminds me of like a Necros.
Yeah.
He's there. He's serviceable. I get it. He's a bad guy. He does bad things. He's a henchman, but he's not memorable. He doesn't have like a hook or, a giant head that opens up. Yeah. I just, fine. I'll put him as like Paris Carver. Fine. But, what did you think of the Q scenes? I know Q scenes, they live warmly in your heart usually.
Oh, so warmly. This is one of my favorites as well. When he gets the car at the airport, I think it's Desmond Llewellyn's, like, I know he obviously came back for The World Is Not Enough, but this is kind of his last really triumphant hurrah, I think. World Is Not Enough has John Cleese, and that's seen as just a bit of a different dynamic, knowing that it's Desmond's last. This is just pure fun. I think Desmond's having a lot of fun. I like when he can't get the car out of the thing and he's like, oh well, with practice you'll be able to do it. I think that's all lovely. One of my very favorites. How about you?
Love it. And I love
Yeah.
the cutscenes, you know,
With the
with
Jaguar.
the Jaguar and stuff like that. It is to me probably, again, in the Brosnan era, I'll say, one of the best interactions, because it really is taking the Mickey out of each other. But, you know, he's demonstrating, you know, Q's absolute reprehensible feeling towards him. And yet there's a certain amount of adoration at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's just pure fun. I mean, I love it. And then even the music, when suddenly just Bond, who's never touched this phone before, suddenly is an absolute expert. It's like, da-na, da-na, na-na-na. Well, yeah, you play the Bond music, David Arnold, because that is so Bond that he can just pick up, you know, a piece of technology and just intuitively know it. That's freaking Bond.
That moment always was like a favorite of mine and my friends, because it's like, and it's the same with the whole car scene as well, actually, how it's like a video game. It's like this is his controller, and it's like a real life video game, and video games are obviously very big for us at that age, so we always just like, oh yeah, that's amazing.
I do have a question for you. I've
Okay.
been wondering about, as we were preparing for this and I saw the film again, what did you think of the very ending? We talked about the big gunfight and everything like that, but there is an ending, and you know, it's him and Wai Lin, and you know, suddenly it's romantic. It's for me, it kind of was strange because I didn't get that chemistry throughout. It was almost like Camille, Olga Kurylenko, and Daniel Craig, like in Quantum. You didn't have that. You didn't need it. And there was a quick kiss at the end. It's like, oh, you kind of did that, didn't you? But what did you think of the very, very ending?
100% agree with what you said there. It's one of those ones where the romance does just feel kind of like shoehorned in because this is a Bond film and this is how we have to end these things. Saying that, I do think that, and you mentioned it earlier on as well, the moments of like flirtiness that they do have throughout the film, I like, and there are definitely these moments where the shot will linger on them looking at each other and whatnot. But it's weird, like the very ending when they're kissing in the water and then they go up and then presumably have sex on the wreckage of the ship. Like I still don't quite know how that works because the stealth ship blows up and she's attached to the roof of it. Would it not collapse down on top of them? It's a bit of I don't quite know how this works, but yeah, it feels shoehorned in. It's a quick exit. Like once the base blows up, that's kind of it. It's like a minute and then there's no scene afterwards. We're out of it.
But it's even his thing of like, let's, you know, they're looking for us, let's stay undercover.
Yeah.
No, you want to be rescued. Like this is death. And you know, I can't help but feel in these Bond films, like even if you look at Spectre, you know, after the train fight with Hinks and they're ripping each other's clothes off, I'm getting the sense that in real life, if you save somebody's life, you will have sex with them. Like that will just explode. And I think it's something that people should not consider. Yeah.
Maybe it's an adrenaline rush. I don't know. I've never saved anyone's life before, but
that is being thankful though. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing of like, let's stay undercover. It's like, dude, like you're in freezing waters. It could be shark infested. I assume there's jellyfish. Ew. So you don't want to be rescued? No.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's a bit of a kind of ending. Again, there's like a deleted scene where I think like he literally pulls over a cover, and there's like a overhead shot of just this like tarpaulin kind of a material with just these figures moving underneath it. It's very unsexy. It's really not. It's not like the Stromberg raft at the end of Spy Who Loved Me, or anything like that. It's just like, oh, this just looks very uncomfortable and not very nice, and it's making me think of Titanic, which is making me sad. So
and
I'm happy to be out of it.
That was their boat. That was the Jack boat, or the door. But the other thing is too, we're talking so much about this ending scene. I love this. You're wet and you're cold, and for those of you that have partaken in sex, when you know it sounds great, but no, that's not good. Like that's not good for anyone. So yeah, this is what happens when you watch a film 5,800 times. You start to think about these little moments like, no, Bond, don't have sex on a steel door. Don't.
But it is saying something that we go like, what, an hour and 55 minutes before we get to this point. Like both of us, I think, are hugely positive about this one.
Oh, yeah.
I guess we can kind of wrap up now, unless there's anything more in your notes that you wanted
Those
to...
are the big moments for me. Style,
Okay.
Q, henchman. This has got it all.
Well, all I wanted to, ask then, I guess, was like, how does this rank amongst the other Brosnans for you at the moment? I think in the last time you ranked all the films, this was your highest Brosnan. Am I right in thinking that? Is it still?
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
I can rattle it off pretty quickly, but to me, it's Tomorrow Never Dies. It's Goldeneye. The
Mm.
World Is Not Enough. Die Another Day.
Okay. Yeah.
And for everybody that's saying, hold on a second, GoldenEye is a masterpiece. I love GoldenEye. Like I really do, and can watch it all the time. But for example, GoldenEye doesn't have David Arnold. You know, GoldenEye doesn't have this new, more comfortable Brosnan in his skin, who is not doing the role for the first time. So he's enjoying himself, and he looks like he's enjoying himself, and Bond is enjoying himself. So it's got all those things that just deliver this escapism moment that I talk so much about. And I loved your whole point earlier about this is the sick day Bond. So if you're sick, or if Danielle's doing something elsewhere and I just want to put on a quick Bond and just leave this earth for 2 hours, this is like the perfect one to do. GoldenEye is a little bit more of a study. Like I want to like think about the plot and the intrigue and what's happening with the Cold War. But Tomorrow Never Dies is gooey pizza Brosnan, and it's the best kind.
There we go. Yeah, I completely agree. And like if I were to do my rankings, it would be slightly different to yours. But they're very much, three of them are very much clustered at the top. It would be GoldenEye, World Is Not Enough, Tomorrow Never Dies. Huge gap, Die Another Day. But all three of those like are quite in my top 10. I love that era of Bond and what each of the films do, and this one, it's exactly what you said. It's gooey fun pizza. When Mark Forster talks about how he wanted Quantum of Solace to feel like a bullet of a film, I feel like this one does, but a fun one. It like moves at such a pace. There's so much great action. It never relents or stops, but you never feel exhausted by it. It's just so much fun, and I'm hopeful still that we will get to a full-on Pierce Brosnan renaissance at some point, like much like how Timothy Dalton's films have had a real bump recently. I think with the goodwill of the Craig era as well. I'm hoping that whatever comes next, we'll get some really good retrospectives about the Brosnan era, because it's a lot of fun.
I'm ready to celebrate Brosnan again. I mean, I love that we're doing this now in the 60th anniversary, because I said this last year. I said Brosnan needs his day in the sun with the Bond fans. Lazenby, one movie, like he's been cherished for decades, and obviously Craig is here and now, and Connery's classic, right? He's iconic, and Timothy Dalton has even seen this resurgence. Like, come on, Brosnan, I'm ready for you, baby. And I will say this with this film, I'll challenge people. So if you are watching No Time to Die with people who have never seen it and they watch it and they're kind of bummed afterwards, they're like, oh man, Bond's dead. Tell them, listen, good news, get yourself another drink. Let's get some more snackies in here. Let's order some pizza, because now I'm going to lift you back up and we're going to watch Tomorrow Never Dies. And you're just going to have fun and a smile on your face from beginning to end. Don't worry.
I think that is a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me for this, David. It's been fun as always, and I couldn't agree with you more. This might well be the most in agreement we've ever been on one of these videos. I wonder if we will be going forwards, because this was a real love fest.
There was a lot of agreement, but we had to do this. I mean, here's the thing. These are not just debates. These are discussions. And I think what it does is it helps you and I even revisit about what we love about these Bond films. And maybe it did that to other people as well.
Oh, hope so. Well, thank you very much again, David. And I look forward to whatever we're going to talk about next. Still got a fair few to go. See you.
Take care.
We have Mr. Bleeker.